God bless you, my friends. I'm Pastor Jefferson of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. Thanking God for this season that we're in, liturgical season, Holy Week. We thank God that we're able to share in the last days of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ's mission. And we thank God for this opportunity just to pour a word of encouragement into your spirit. And this word comes to us from Hebrews, the 12th chapter, verses 1 through 3. Hebrews, the 12th chapter, verses 1 through 3. And we find these words, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so does easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your mind. Verse number 2, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. I want to talk about, for a few moments, the joy of Jesus. The joy of Jesus. We understand that Jesus is, as the text declares to us, he's the author and the finisher of our faith as Christians. He starts us off in terms of the whole body of Christ. He's our author. He starts us out, and he's finished his work on the cross. And so if you're looking for an example of someone who lived a life that God was pleased with, who set an example, we have to look at our Savior. Many people have been disappointed in their life. You look for other examples and they let you down. But Jesus never failed. He's never let us down. And so when you are looking for an example, accept no substitutes for Jesus. And when you consider what Jesus did for us, and especially this last week, this Passion Week, one word that ought to come up in your mind is opposition. His opposition. We're talking about the forces that come up against you from trying to obtain what you desire. And as believers, opposition is a part of the Christian walk. Any Christian that doesn't learn how to handle opposition in your life, you're going to always be defeated. And many of you know that when you try to do good, evil is ever present. When you try to do the right thing, a lot of times people and forces, they don't like it. And when you try to move forward and do positive things, you will find you will encounter opposition. Many Christians have fallen by the wayside because they were trying to obtain the blessings of God, not only for them, but for their families and others. And they didn't know, hey, you're going to have some opposition that comes against you. Athletes train for opposition. It's so easy on a basketball court to shoot all kinds of shots, and I've seen people make just about every shot when nobody's in your face. But when somebody gets in your face and you're trying to shoot that shot from even the places you practice from, it's different when somebody's in your face trying to oppose you. And so one of the things that you got to understand is that you got to know that there's going to be opposition everywhere you face, on your job, sometimes even from your loved one. And you will encounter opposition from Satan. And really, truth be told, you can sometimes encounter opposition from yourself, because sometimes trying to conquer yourself is an opposition. And I'll deal with that in some later message. The reality is that Jesus is our hero because he knew how to deal with the forces that were coming against him. And so Jesus came. He came to win. He didn't come to lose. He had a victorious mindset. When you're a victorious person, losing is not on your mind. He came to win. and he fought so that we could be victorious. And so the reality is that the enemy is fighting some of us tooth and nail. But we're soldiers in the army of the Lord, and no weapon that is formed against us shall be able to prosper. And we will encounter opposition, but the opposition will not prosper. And so we look at something that is kind of interesting. Jesus has to face his opposition. He has got these people who are coming against him, religious forces. The Roman government is coming against him. And here's what Paul said in Hebrews. He says, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despised the same shame. In life, I don't care what you do, you need motivation, especially when you encounter opposition. It's got to be, what's the reward? What's the motivation for me having to go through this? And what motivated Jesus, and the text says it, is that he was motivated by joy. Wow. The joy of the Lord is our strength. You heard me and other pastors say it for years. It's the joy that gave Jesus the strength. I'm talking about really the joy of anticipation. Jesus did not escape his own personal passion, and he was God's only begotten son, but the joy of anticipation, it was something that helped him to get through what he had to get through. Reality is that what are you setting before you that brings you joy? Is all you see misery and pain, or do you see God setting joy before you? He said joy. That's what Paul said. He said, I'm setting joy before my son, so that even whatever he has to go through, I'm setting a joy before him that'll give him strength to endure. We all have our limits, and we need motivation. Jesus, please understand, he was not a lover of pain. He has to go to the cross. He's going to be tortured. But his pain had purpose. And even though his pain had purpose, and Jesus said, I can go through what I got to go through with expected joy. I know that if I get to the other side, I'm going to have joy. Many people don't associate Jesus with joy. I wish some people would really associate his life more with joy. And the reality is, I have to have joy. If you have joy in the world before you met Jesus, you know you should have joy with Jesus in your life. Yes, joy, life is serious, but God wanted me to let you know, because it's all this stuff that's going on. God is saying you can get through it because I'm setting before you joy. He's setting it up in front of you. I stopped by here to tell you, God is setting before you joy, prophetic joy of seeing victory past your pain, prophetic joy in seeing you laugh at your enemies after all they've done they could do. God is setting before you the joy and the satisfaction of seeing your enemies not being able to prevail. Prophetic joy over your life. I will not wait till I get to heaven before I have joy, the strength. I see the joy, and it sustained me. Yes, we're going to have pain, but we're going to have joy that sustains us. Yeah, you can't tell me that the disciples did not have joy when they realized that Jesus was raised from the dead. And I have joy because I believe in God's plan for my life, and I'm a part of God's plan, and nothing that's going to happen to me that God is not going to work out together for good. And so the reality is, sometimes people will let you down, sometimes circumstances are hard, but God sets before you joy. And this Bible said joy comes in the morning. Jesus had joy not based on what he was going through then, but he had joy that was dependent on his expected end. And so I stopped by here to tell you, beloved, for the joy that was set before Jesus, he endured the cross. He despised the shame, because what they did to Jesus, they meant to do it to bring shame to his life. They wanted to shame Jesus. The cross was the most shameful form of death in the Roman Empire during that time. They wanted to make a spectacle of everybody who was crucified on the cross. And Jesus was able to get over the shame of the cross because God has set before him joy. Here's what happens when the enemy does to us. Sometimes the enemy will bring about the shame of our past and say, you know what? How could you be serving God when you know what you've done in your past? In fact, the past may not be that far past, and he'll try to set before you a vision of shame over your life so that you won't go forward, that you'll go backwards, or that you'll stay still. But Jesus, for the joy that was set before him, even though they were doing all of these crazy things, that God set before him enough joy to say, you know what, son, you get through this, and I've got something better for you. And so for those of you who the enemy has tried to condemn and say that your life is not worthy because of your past, I set before you joy, because the joy of the Lord is your strength. I stopped by here to tell you on today that I'd like to believe, for the joy that was set before our Savior, that I believe that Jesus had a vision. He had a vision of this world being set free from the power of sin and death. Jesus had the joy of knowing that he would get up on Sunday morning with all power, where he could say, because I live, you can live also. I want to make it personal. I believe that Jesus had the joy of thinking that one day an Andre Pierre Jefferson Sr. Would come to know him as the Lord and Savior of his life. I believe that Jesus was able to endure because he realized, if I can just get through this moment, that the whole world can be redeemed. It's not just for Jesus, because we're his followers. And as we get through, and we will get through, this crazy, mixed up, tumultuous season that we are in, God told me to tell you, he's setting before you joy. Don't you quit, because there is joy on the other side of it. No, it don't feel good. Yes, it's painful. Yes, you're going to have to go through some things, but God is setting before you joy. That not if you get through, but when you get through this, you'll be able to look back and laugh. You'll be able to look back and laugh. You'll be able to look back and giggle. You'll be able to look back and appreciate what God has done in your life. You'll be able to say, if it had not been for the Lord who was on my side, I know I would not have made it, because he prepared a table before me in the presence of my enemies. I stopped by here to tell you, we're going to make it in this season, because God, like he did with his son, he's going to set before you joy. 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 I wish for that for you. An expectation of joy. What he did for Jesus, you can expect for him to do that too. Don't you give up. Don't you throw in the towel. Don't you quit. I don't care how rough it gets. God is setting before you joy. God bless you.